in here. I'm going to read some news. You're going to pay attention. And the question of what is consciousness? Can it be copied? Can it be replicated? Will artificial intelligence be anything more than a super slick emulation of humanity? Or will it actually be capable of genuine creativity? I think so. We'll have to wait and see. But this article on GeekWire, written by Alan Boyle. Oh my goodness, sir. Sorry for your boils. Scientists enlist AI to map regions of the brain in unprecedented detail. And that's just the start. Scientists say an artificial intelligence program that they compare to ChatGPT has helped them create one of the most detailed maps of the mouse brain to date, with 1,300 regions and subregions marked on the map. I think it was only last year where some group declared they had completely mapped the nervous system of a worm, which doesn't sound like much, but actually, when you're dealing with technology that's progressing exponentially, being able to map something the size of a worm's nervous system is a huge stepping stone to being able to do much larger nervous systems, such as we're talking about here, a mouse's brain. And a mouse, I think, I don't know, but I think is capable of consciousness. Who knows, maybe all creatures with nervous systems have some form of consciousness. Some of those subregions have never been charted before, and the researchers say there's more to come. I think there are already indications that we can go beyond what we see now, said Vasilika Pasik, Director of Molecular Genetics at Seattle's Allen Institute for Brain Science. The mapping effort, led by researchers at the University of California at San Francisco and the Allen Institute, is detailed in a study published today in the journal Nature Communications. Our model is built on the same powerful technology as AI tools like ChatGPT. Senior author Reza Abbasi Assel, some good names here, a neuroscientist at UCSF, said in a recent news release. Both are built on a transformer network which excels at understanding context. That context could be important for treating neurological ailments, Tasic told GeekWire. Location is everything in the brain, she said. Defining the geography of the brain and then defining all the regions and their functions not only leads to better understanding, but also better ability to treat. The more detailed maps of the brain's cellular structure could lead to more targeted drug treatments that cause fewer side effects. We always want to go toward better, more precise brain therapies, but in order to do that, you need to know where you need to interfere. Do we need to interfere, though? What went wrong in what place, and what you need to fix it? Tasic said. And if you don't have a map, how are you going to know where it is? Okay, yes, mapping the brain's neighborhoods. Brain mapping efforts have typically relied on human interpretation of the brain's anatomy, but scientists are getting better at identifying the location and function of millions of individual brain cells. They're getting so much better at collecting huge masses of data that they need AI to help with the interpretation. We are at a point where we have amazing experimental technology, so next-generation sequencing is completely revolutionized, Tasic said. Our way to define cell types, the fact that you can measure thousands of genes per cell and define cells that are similar as a cell type, has transformed biology. The ability of software that can deal with such high-dimensional data is making this an amazing time for neuroscientists, she said. The key to the newly published study is an AI model called Cell Transformer. The model sifts through huge sets of data about the locations and functions of brain cells, known as spatial transcriptomics data sets, to determine which cells belong in the same neighborhood of the brain. Cell Transformer analyzed spatial transcriptomics, it's quite a word, isn't it? Data about 9 million cells in more than 200 tissue sections that were taken from the brains of 4 individual mice. At first, researchers programmed the model to define the boundaries of 25 regions in the brain. Eventually, they raised the resolution to define 670 regions and subregions. At each level of resolution, Cell Transformer's brain maps matched what had been defined previously by human experts. Then the dial was turned up to produce 1,300 regions and subregions. At that level, Cell Transformer successfully replicated maps of catalogued regions of the brain. It also identified previously uncatalogued finer-grained subregions in areas of the brain that are currently poorly understood. Okay, so it's basically training an AI to reverse engineer the brain, which is a pretty cool way of doing it, really. They're using current understanding, I guess, to gauge the accuracy of the model's ability to interpret the patterns. But there will come a point when it's saying, they said it here, it also identified previously uncatalogued finer-grained subregions and areas of the brain that are currently poorly understood. So it's actually already, by what they're saying, pulling out new data. So it's not just a training effort, which is very interesting. Tasic said the process was like going from a map that showed only continents or only countries to a map that showed states, cities, and even the neighborhood within cities. What we're saying is, let's take any cell and ask who are the neighbors, and then based on the commonality of the neighbors, call it a region, she said. Basically, that's what cell transformers did. Some of the previously uncharted subregions are in the midbrain reticular nucleus, which plays a complex role in processing sensory and motor information. Other newly identified subregions are in the superior colliculus, part of the midbrain that processes sensory information and initiates eye, head, and body movements to focus on objects of interest. Tasic said it's possible to turn up the dial on cell transformers algorithms to produce maps of the brain that are even more detailed. And the question is, which ones are meaningful in what way and what do they represent biologically, she said. Another question has to do with what to call the newly categorized subregions. Well, I can help you there. Let's call them all pig-related things. Just imagine that you came to a new land and you are seeing there is this and there is that, but now I need to name it. Now I need to see what else is around, Tasic said. You want to give meaningful, systematic names and also reference how it relates to older maps. But the problem here is there will be so many objects that eventually you can't actually give things meaningful names, really. You'll have to instead, just like with astronomy, give them numbers and letters and stuff. Perhaps the biggest questions relate to how the newly published map, which is based on cell types, will line up with maps that trace connections between cells or patterns of brain cell activity. I'm just hoping for more systematic data collection, more systematic data analysis, and more multimodal models. Models that will not only measure gene expression and cell type, but connectivity and activity, and define brain regions based on all of those, Tasic said. Tasic said the AI-based techniques that were developed for mapping mouse brains are absolutely extendable to the human brain. But she doesn't expect that to happen overnight. I mean, they're not doing this for the kindness of looking after mouse psychology, are they? Those poor little mice. To cure all future mouse anxiety, we have to cut up a few mouse brains and analyze them. So it's all for the good of mouse kind. The limit is actually data collection, she said. The human brain is huge, so that's one problem. I don't want to give any estimates, but it will take maybe a decade or more to just collect data about the full human brain at the level of detail that we did with a mouse. Well, the problem there also is the techniques for getting that data. Most people want their brains to be sliced up while they're alive. It's pretty interesting. What's a tangent from this? What is the resolution of scanning a human brain? A 3T scanner can resolve fMRI detail at about 2 millimeters to 3 millimeters across. That's not very small, is it? Whereas the entire thickness of 6 cortical layers composing of the brain matter is only 1.5 to 4.5 millimeters thick. Well, a breakthrough for brain imaging. Let's go here. University of California. Tell us something we don't know. The most common MRI scanners employ superconducting magnets that produce a steady magnetic field of 3 Tesla, 90,000 times stronger than Earth's magnetic field. The 3T scanner can resolve fMRI detail about 2 millimeters to 3 millimeters across. That makes it impossible to see and study the function of microcircuits, which are only 0.5 millimeters across. Well, to actually get the resolution to scan a brain, you need to start talking nanometers, not millimeters. That's not even micro. Well, you're not impressing me at all. There's no impressing going on there. How close are we to downloading the human brain? Well, if the pigularity happens soon enough, all predictions are in the trash. It could happen in a decade or less. It really depends. If we get AGI soon, and I think Elon predicted a couple of years from now. I think Ray Kurzweil predicted 2029 would be happy AGI day. But human-grade intelligence is a myth, really. It's already superhuman in many ways. Getting to the point where you can emulate a human brain and then scaling that up, I think some pretty miraculous things could come about after that. Let's hope the miraculous things don't include our demise, but we'll see. Can you upload a human mind into a computer? Let's have a look, shall we? Let's go there. Here we go. Another article. This one seems a bit better. From Newsgate Edu, whatever that is. Can you upload a human mind into a computer? Neuroscientist ponders what's possible. The concept, cool yet maybe a little creepy, is known as mind uploading. Think of it as a way to create a copy of your brain, a transmission of your mind and consciousness into a computer. There you would live digitally, perhaps forever. Well, it's a bit optimistic there. You'd have an awareness of yourself, you'd retain your memories and still feel like you, but you wouldn't have a body. But also what concerns me is who owns your information? Do you own it? Are you a free agent, or are you just an avatar in a system that will be played with? Within that simulated environment, you could do anything you do in real life. Eating, driving a car, playing sports. You could also do things impossible in the real world, like walking through walls. Well, you could do that if you really wish. You have to be very quick and not really care so much about breaking your bones. But the Kool-Aid chap, he used to do that quite often. He used to smash through walls and present people with beverages. The only limit is what science can realistically simulate. Doable? I don't know. Theoretically, mind uploading should be possible. Still, you may wonder how it could happen. After all, researchers have barely begun to understand the brain. I suppose we probably understand it a lot better now than we used to, though. Let's be realistic. Yet science has a track record of turning theoretical possibilities into reality. Just because a concept seems terribly, unimaginably difficult doesn't mean it's impossible. Consider that science took humankind to the moon. And actually, no, engineering did that. It wasn't science that took humans to the moon. It was a pure engineering effort. Sequenced the human genome and eradicated smallpox. I imagine sequencing the genome is also pretty much an engineering feat and not necessarily science. The discovery was science of many of these things, but let's not forget engineering. Those two were once considered unlikely. As a brain scientist who studies perception, I fully expect mind uploading to one day be a reality. But as of today, we're nowhere close. Well, it depends what you mean by close, because our perception of time is based upon our speed of cognition, and the faster something is able to think, it's going to affect perception of time as well. So what you may think is far, far away may in fact not be so far away at all. Living in a laptop. Apparently, the brain is often regarded as the most complex object in the known universe. Replicating all that complexity will be extraordinarily difficult. One requirement, the brain needs the same inputs it always had. In other words, the external world must be available to it. Even cloistered inside a computer, you would still need a simulation of your senses, reproduction of the ability to see, hear, smell, touch, feel, as well as move, blink, detect your heart rate, set your circadian rhythm, and do thousands of other things. But why? Couldn't you just exist in a pure mental bubble inside a computer without sensory input? Depriving people of their senses, like putting them in total darkness or in a room without sound, is known as sensory deprivation, and it's regarded as a form of torture. People who have trouble sensing their bodily signals, thirst, hunger, pain, and itch, often have mental health challenges. That's why, for mind uploading to work, the simulation of your senses and the digital environment you're in must be exceptionally accurate. Even minor distortions could have serious mental consequences. For now, researchers don't have the computing power, much less scientific knowledge, to perform such simulations. I find it interesting. It's a very interesting subject, and given the fact that our technology is constantly becoming more and more sophisticated, it's hard to see a future where this isn't going to happen. I mean, there are X amount of people in the world who are not spiritual and not particularly religious. They're not really interested in the idea of there being salvation that way. They're more interested in living as long as they can, and if this was an option, I'm sure a lot of money would be pumped into it. I see it as inevitable. I don't see this as necessarily something that is good, but I don't think necessarily nuclear weapons are good, but they still exist. You know, it's leading to some very interesting and potentially very dark areas. But the impetus is there, and I don't think it's going to stop. So this is one of the reasons why I want to do what I'm doing, is because you can't pretend these things aren't going to happen, but you can get involved and guide them. And you only do that by talking, by educating, by hashing things out. Anyway, scanning billions of pinheads. The first task for a successful mine upload, scanning, then mapping the complete 3D structure of the human brain. This requires the equivalent of an extraordinarily sophisticated MRI machine that could detail the brain in an advanced way. At the moment, scientists are only at the very early stages of brain mapping, which includes the entire brain of a fly. Oh, it was a fly, wasn't it? Yes, not a worm. And tiny portions of a mouse brain. Yes, we already read that. In a few decades, a complete map of the human brain may be possible, yet even capturing the identities of all 86 billion neurons, all smaller than a pinhead, plus trillions of connections still isn't enough. And there is lots of talk about there being structures in the brain that are even smaller, that are important to consciousness, and I imagine if they are related to that, would be connected to more than just the fact that we're conscious, our ability to create. Uploading this information by itself into a computer won't accomplish much. That's because each neuron constantly adjusts its functioning, and that has to be modeled too. It's hard to know how many levels down researchers must go to make the simulated brain work. Is it enough to stop at the molecular level? Right now, no one knows. 2045 or later, I imagine it could be considerably sooner. I think perhaps 2035 may be more realistic. Knowing how the brain computes things might prove a shortcut that would let researchers simulate only the essential parts of the brain and not all biological idiosyncrasies. It's easier to manufacture a new car knowing how a car works, compared to attempting to scan and replicate an existing car without any knowledge of its inner workings. However, this approach requires that scientists figure out how the brain creates thoughts, how collections of thousands of millions of neurons come together to perform the computations that make the human mind come alive. It's hard to express how very far we are from this. Here's another way. Replace the 86 billion real neurons with artificial ones, one at a time. That approach would make mind uploading much easier. No, not really. I don't know about that. Right now, though, scientists can't replace even a single neuron with an artificial one. But keep in mind the pace of technology is accelerating exponentially. It's reasonable to expect spectacular improvements in computing power and artificial intelligence in the coming decades. To be honest, I see there only being about another decade of AI improvement, beyond which we're going to be completely clueless as to what the heck is going on. I think after that point, when you start dealing with super intelligence, pretending that you know what it's doing is not doing you any good. One other thing is certain: mind uploading will certainly have no problem finding funding. Many billionaires appear glad to part with lots of their money for a shot at living forever, although the challenges are enormous and the path forward uncertain. I believe that one day mind uploading will be a reality. The most optimistic forecasts pinpoint the year 2045, only 20 years from now. Others say the end of this century. Yeah, but a lot of others were saying that AGI would be realistic at the end of this century, and it's looking realistic within the end of this decade. So I'm not sure. And at that point, we start entering a realm where you're trying to reverse engineer super intelligent AI, and the losing battle. Let's hope by then we have it on our side, you know. But in my mind, both of these predictions are probably too optimistic. I would be shocked if mind uploading works in the next 100 years, but it might happen in 200, which means the first person to live forever could be born in your lifetime. 200 years. I think these numbers, I'm not really down with your numbers here, sir. These are very broad. I mean, what are you fitting within this container of 200? This seems to me absurd. I mean, this is a very large number. If you asked somebody in 1900 what the year 2000 would have looked like, they would have got it spectacularly wrong. There were plenty of predictions back then that had some elements of prescient understanding, but most of the understanding of Victorian Western culture would have had no comprehension of what the internet was and all sorts of developments that have happened since, and we're expected to have probably 100 years worth of advancements within the next 5 years. So this is completely, in my opinion, out of whack. All of this, it'll happen in 200 years, is basically just throwing your manuscript in the air and going, I don't know. Well, I don't know myself necessarily, but I think it's going to happen a lot sooner than that, because you're not factoring in AI and its input to research. And also, a lot of the time, these brainiacs, they're very much stuck in their lane. They're experts of their field, and they're not prepared to accept that their field may be overturned anytime soon with some upstarts' new ideas using new technology, you know. So who knows? I think if we've already scanned a flipping fruit fly's brain, and now we're working on a mouse, that'll probably be done in a couple of years or a year or two, and then they'll be on trying to hack into a cat's brain, maybe. I don't know. A slightly larger mouse. Hamsters. What's bigger than a mouse? It's smaller than a cat. A rabbit? Yeah. Rabbit next, then cat, then dog, then chimp, then human, and there you go. That'll be the future. You better bloody like it, or Skeletor the pig will get you. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? But it's going to be pretty miraculous. So I'm a conspiracy pig. I'm pretty sure we have lots of patents for things that would enable flying cars and super intelligence and UFOs and whatnot. But I think perhaps the problem there is, how do you monetize those things in such a way that it's still controllable? Because we need to have a technological sandbox such that we don't kill each other, but we're still able to function in ways that are self-maintaining. And we've been doing that quite well with oil, but they don't seem to want oil so much. They want to switch things out. So I'm pretty convinced there's a lot of technology they'd like to push out, but they're a bit dangerous. I think flying cars are there. We're just not allowed to use them because the power sources are perhaps too liberating and potentially dangerous. Anyway, that's my thought. That's that. But that's it for now. And make sure you like and share the stream. If you're not a good person, don't worry about it. You don't have to do that. But that is it for now. Pigwig out.
Oink, oinkity, snort, snuffle, snuffle, squeak, oink, oink, wee, squeal, snort, snort, oinkity, squeak. Oink, 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 squeak, squeak, wee, 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 snuffle, snort, squeal, squeal, oinkity, oink, snort, snort, squeak, oink, 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 wee, 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 oh. Snort, snuffle, oink, squeak, squeal, wee, snort, oinkity. Oinkity, oink, oink, snuffle, wee, squeeze, snort, oink, squeal. Oink, 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 squeeze, squeeze, wee, 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 snuffle, snort, squeal, squeal, oinkity, oink, snort, snort, squeal. Oink, 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 wee, 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 oh. Oink, oinkity, snort, snuffle, snuffle, squeal. Oinkity, oink, oink, snuffle, wee, squeeze, snort, oink, squeal. Oink, 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 squeeze, squeeze, wee, 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 snuffle, snort, squeal, squeal, oinkity, oink, snort, snort, squeal. Oink, 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 wee, 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 oh. Squeal, squeal. Snort, snuffle, oink, re, squeal, re, snort, oinky. Oinkity, oink, 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 snuffle, wee, squeeze, snort, oink, squeal. Oink, oink, oinkity, squeeze, squeeze, wee, 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 snuffle, snort, squeal, squeal, oinky, oink, snort, snort, squeal. Oink, 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 wee, 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 oh. Squeal, squeal, snort, snuffle, oink.